So Shy by Vicky Morrison. Jake sat alone on the beach. There were lots of children playing on the sand, but Jake sat there all alone. Jake was shy. He watched the other children playing and longed to play with them, but he was afraid to ask. Sometimes Jake pretended that his shadow was his best friend. He wasn't shy at all with his shadow. Everywhere that Jake went, so did his shadow. They played on the beach together, running through the waves that crashed along the shore. They built their own sandcastle with walls so high that nobody could get in, except, of course, Jake and his shadow. But shadows can't talk, so Jake never laughed or joked with his best friend. "You're the only friend I've got," said Jake sadly. He held out his hand and tried to touch his shadow. "You're great, but I wish I could have a real friend, one who can talk to me. I just need to be brave enough to find one." His shadow nodded. Jake and his shadow walked to the playground. Jake stood on the path and watched the other children racing around and having fun. He really wanted to join them, but he was just too shy to ask. Jake spotted the swings. "Do you want to ride on the shadows?" he asked his shadow. His shadow nodded and moved quickly towards the swings, pulling Jake behind him. Together they flew high in the air. "That was fun," said Jake, hopping off the swing. "Do you want to play on the rocks now?" His shadow nodded, and with Jake by his side, he jumped from rock to rock all along the shore. Jake thought he'd try something harder. "Do you want to climb that big tree and hang on like monkeys?" he asked his shadow. His shadow nodded, so together they climbed slowly up the branches all the way to the top, and carefully his shadow helped Jake back down onto the ground. Jake and his shadow sat quietly beneath the tree. "You're a great friend," he told his shadow. "You can swing and you can jump and climb." Jake sighed. "If only you could talk." His shadow nodded. Suddenly, Jake heard someone crying. He turned and there stood a little girl. "What's wrong?" asked Jake. He was so concerned about the little girl that he forgot for a moment to be shy. "My cat's in the tree," said the girl, "and she can't get down and I'm too scared to climb up." Jake wanted to help, but he wasn't sure if he could do it by himself. He turned to his shadow and he whispered, "Should we try to climb that tree like we did before and get the cat?" The shadow nodded quickly. Jake's shadow helped him onto the first branch. Then Jake began to climb. He was thinking so hard about where to put his feet that he didn't notice that his shadow was still on the ground. "Come here," Jake whispered to the cat. "I'm going to help you." Jake cuddled the cat in his arms and carried her safely back down the tree. And that's when he saw his shadow waiting on the ground. "Wow!" he thought. "I did it by myself." "Oh, thank you," cried the little girl, hugging her cat. "You were so brave to rescue her." And Jake did feel brave enough to ask, "What's your name?" "Julie," the girl replied. So Jake and Julie sat beneath the tree and when Jake turned, he saw that his shadow was sitting there too, right next to Julie's shadow. Soon Jake and Julie were talking and laughing together, and so were their shadows. Jake liked it that Julie also had a shadow for a friend. Maybe she was a little shy too, he thought, but he liked it even better when he and Julie were real friends. "Come on," cried Jake, taking Julie's hand, and as they ran back to the beach, their shadows ran behind them, 4 friends having a wonderful time together.